Hey, I'm Rachel,
And I'm Amanda, and this is Beyond a Ballot.
powered by DoorDash.
Welcome to another episode of Beyond a Ballot. We're back. Parliament's out. School's out for most people. And we are on the cusp of breaking for our season 2, taking a little time off in the summer. But we have this episode and one more episode, and then we wrap season 2. So, hi, Amanda.
Hi, Rachel. If everyone could see us right now, maybe you're on Instagram and you can. Rachel and I showed up dressed exactly alike.
Exactly alike.
In our matching white t-shirts, clearly ready for summer.
No kidding. I think that this is the point of the podcast we're at, where we just start dressing alike, and we're like, all right, we've taped 64,000 episodes this season, and let's get a break. But here's the thing: this is why this season, the end of the season, feels so different. I think it's because we have not actually had a break in about a year. Like anybody that works in politics in Canada, you'll remember we did a final episode for season 1, and then we had to come back with an emergency episode because shortly after, Joe Biden resigned. Remember that? And Kamala Harris came in. That that feels like 10 generations ago. And then we had the whole US election. We had the whole Canadian election. We had a prime minister resign through winter break over Christmas. There was a lot going on. And so this potentially, I mean, knock on wood, could be our first political break in Canada in about a year. How crazy is that?
Totally. I mean, there are wars.
Wars, yes.
There's so much global instability. There's new relationships being forged, relationships being destroyed. If there was ever a year in review in politics, this is going to be one to remember. And I don't think, despite the fact that the House isn't sitting, this government is not going to be slowing down. This is going to be a very busy summer anyway, mostly because of the trade deals that are shaping up, and expect a lot of announcements and also a lot of involvement from the provinces. So there will still be lots to talk about, but we will be taking a little break. We have a really fun final episode, and then we'll be back with a jam-packed season 3
in September. Okay, but let's look back. I wanted to start today's episode just by looking back at the last few weeks. I mean, we had Melissa Lantsman on a couple of weeks ago, but we haven't really dived into the nitty gritty of the Carney government, which was him being in the House, passing a bunch of very interesting and very important legislation. We saw the Conservatives working with the Liberals over the last few weeks to pass some big bills. And so let's break some of those down and what's happened. Let's start with the big news of this week, which is that the Senate passed Bill 5, which is the One Economy bill. So breaking down trade barriers, interprovincial trade barriers, and also big projects. So giving the government the ability to build based on national importance. So meaning the government of Canada can decide that a project is of national importance, and that can be fast-tracked to be built, and going off of a lot of the promises that Mark Carney and the Liberals made during the campaign. Now, this bill got some pushback from the Conservatives, who ultimately were able to make amendments to it, not on the interprovincial trade stuff, but the ability for the government to hold that power. And I think the Conservatives did a great job in amending the bill to a point where everybody voted in favor of it. You've probably heard, as you're listening, of these bills that are being passed provincially, because there are provincial and federal responsibilities when we talk about building big projects. Some provinces have done it better than others. I have talked about British Columbia and some of the issues that we've had out here with our bill. But I think that ultimately what this bill signifies is kind of this fast forward. Remember VCRs, we used to press fast forward, a fast forward button when it comes to building and making our economy boom, I think is what this is signifying
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah, and when we look back, like, why did this all start? Well, it started because of the Trump tariffs and the trade war with the U.S. and Canada had to take a hard look at ourselves internally, domestically, and say what could we be doing differently
Right.
in order to break down some of these internal barriers. And this was one of, I think, I have a hard time actually remembering any other bill of this nature which brought the provinces together in a way that allowed the federation to work, I think, the way that it's supposed to. And that was for the provinces to look at one another and for them to say there's new deals to be had between our provinces. There's barriers that have prevented us from being able to move goods across the country, to move resources across the country, to get resources to other markets. The premiers came together. The government came together to remove what essentially should have been removed a long time ago. And the one other point I'll make on this was that very early on, when the government started talking about this idea of removing interprovincial trade barriers, there was a lot of criticism. There was a lot of critique around this notion that it was an impossible thing to do. Like, you could talk about it, maybe it could get done. It was actually Trudeau who first started talking about this. And
I don't even remember that.
Yes. And everyone said, like, there's no, it won't happen. It can't happen. And this is proof that it can happen, that the country can work at a speed in which we may not be used to, but which we are capable of. And I think when Canada's sovereignty and security and economy came under threat, this was a chance for the country to operate in a really new way. And for the leaders of the country, both at the provincial and the federal level, to take on a role of leadership that they hadn't really taken on before, which enabled them to act with a speed and urgency of which the time and the circumstances required. So this is one of those moments where I'm really proud of how the government and how the provincial governments have responded, because I think it's going to pay dividends for Canadians.
So for me, that's the big point. It's like we've taken steps on the path to creating a better economy, creating more interprovincial trade. I just think that there are a lot of, over the last few months, a lot of promises being made in response to Donald Trump, a lot of people trying to move projects forward. And yet we're seeing there's private enterprise that's saying, oh, well, we're not really interested in bidding on a project or creating a project because of some of the laws that still exist in Canada that make it really hard for these companies to build these massive projects. I mean, I have anxiety just thinking about the risk, the liability that these companies take on financially to build our big projects in this country. And I think what we need is for a government to make that more lucrative so that we see Canadian companies coming in and saying, okay, now that legislation has changed. Now we're getting faster approvals on these projects, but ultimately, what's the incentive for us to build? And I think that there are still legislative barriers to that will probably come up in the fall if we don't see some projects moving forward over the next couple of months. But I'm on full-time by-election watch. Are you? No. Okay, so for those that don't know,
I am not, but you might be. But before we get to that, I just want to say one more thing, because I think it's really important for our listeners to understand this, that at the same time, and you're probably reading about this anyways, but if you're not, the government is doing it. There's two tracks underway right now. There's the interprovincial track, and then there's also the track with other nations, our trade deals with other nations, which are obviously critically important. And I think there's three to raise, because those you'll hear a lot about them over the summer. One is the 30-day sprint for a new deal with the US. So the G7 was held in Canada just a couple of weeks ago. Carney met with President Trump. They talked about this 30-day deadline to negotiate a new Canada-US trade agreement. And that was really to resolve issues around steel, aluminum, the auto tariffs. That we're all going to be watching, because that will be our like July focus. Does Does President Trump end up coming to the table for that deal? Does that 30-day sprint actually happen? That's supposed to happen by July 21st. So that's one to watch. The second is this new strategic partnership with the EU.
Yes.
So in Brussels, just this month, just a few days ago, Carney signed the Canada-EU strategic partnership. And that was launching negotiations on digital trade, on AI cooperation, on the green economy collaboration. That it was absolutely in response to this idea that we have to diversify our trade relationships. Our trade relationships can't be, focused with so much reliance on the US. So Prime Minister Carney has made a big push toward that. And then the final one is the Canada-UK trade. It's called the CPTPP alignment.
What?
Get some PR people.
Oh my God.
Get a
What
name
would you
that people
call
can
it?
say and remember.
What would you call it?
I don't know. The Canada-UK trade deal? Something simple, but it's
Why
so
does it have
absurd.
so
But
many
it's to
letters?
ratify. I can't even tell you what all the letters stand for. Can you?
No. Can you say them again?
No. CPTPP.
See? Yeah, I don't know. That's
CPTPP. Like what? Anyway, I think that's right. Anyway, so Canada is part of the CPTPP membership. They remain a founding member, and this will help to strengthen their Indo-Pacific trade ties with the UK and our allies. So like a lot is happening, right? A lot is happening right now to diversify our trade relationships and to really forge and strengthen ties with other nations.
Yeah, and to his credit, when we saw Mark Carney come in as Liberal leader, then Prime Minister, he really just got on the plane and went to Europe and really signified that this would be a big priority of his government. And I think he's put his money where his mouth is on that. And we saw that through the G7. We saw the fact that the British Prime Minister came to Ottawa. He didn't fly directly to Calgary. He actually stopped to meet with the Prime Minister, with Mark Carney. And yeah, I agree with you. I think this is going to be a big narrative over the summer, expanded trade overseas for sure. But back to...
And CPTPP stands for...
Yep. What is it?
Because I looked it up.
Okay.
Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership with 11 countries across Asia Pacific.
That's cool. Good. All right. Well, let's see that.
Okay. Now we know.
Yeah.
Now we know, guys.
See that expand.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry. So back to what's happening on home soil.
Yes.
By-election.
We're all on by-election watch.
For our guy.
For Pierre Poilievre. So you may remember... that Pierre Poilievre lost his seat over the last few months. He remains the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. I've had a couple of people reach out to me and say, does he have a job? Yes, he does. He is still the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. He is he is just not the leader in the House of Commons. That is Andrew Scheer. Right. Meanwhile, Mark Carney has said that he will call this by-election as soon as somebody resigns their seat. That seat has been resigned. It was resigned last week, and we are still waiting on Mark Carney to come out and call that by-election. He has 6 months to do so from the time that person resigns. Now, rumors have been swirling.
Who resigned again?
It was Damien Couric. I was going to mess up his last.
How sad for poor Damien.
You know what?
Right? Like Damien goes out, he makes this, but like a minute on this. He makes this choice. He says, you know what? Maybe he has this childhood dream. He's like living his dream. I'm going to become a member of parliament. This is a huge sacrifice, personal sacrifice to his family. Goes out, he runs in this election. He wins his seat, and then he gets the phone call, and it's like, buddy, for some reason you are selected as the least important Conservative member, and our leader who couldn't save his own seat, couldn't win his own seat, is going to come to your safe province to try to take yours. That was some sad stuff going on there.
So the flip side of that equation is that I'm told that Damien is an amazing team player. I don't think he was specifically told that he had to resign the seat. I think that there was a few people that realized that they had seats that were pretty safe and that the leader could potentially run in. And ultimately, Damien stepped forward and decided to do that. But yeah, I don't think, let me say, this is not abnormal. We have seen other situations where members of caucus have had to step down in order for a leader. For example, in British Columbia, when Christy Clark became the premier, she didn't have a seat. And Ben Stewart, a member of her caucus, the very safe seat in Kelowna, BC, stepped down. He then was reelected later on when Christy changed into a different riding and became part of caucus again. So I hear what you're saying. I know you run and you have this amazing, this amazing win, but it's not to say that he won't be back at some point. And as we always say, politics is a team sport, and really giving your seat up for the leader to run is like the ultimate sacrifice for your team. So go,
and
Damien.
why, Rachel, is why is Poilievre running in Alberta?
He's running in Alberta. Well, that most obvious reason is because that's kind of ground zero for conservatism in Canada. But also, Pierre is from Alberta. He grew up in Calgary, born and raised, and has a long history in Alberta politics from a really young age. So there's alignment there. Sometimes that doesn't always happen, though. There are some times where somebody will resign a seat or have an open seat. For example, remember Jagmeet Singh, the former leader of the NDP? He needed a seat, and Kennedy Stewart at the time stepped down to run for mayor of Vancouver. He was elected. Jagmeet Singh, who was from Burnaby, who was the deputy leader of the Ontario NDP. Did I say Burnaby? I meant Brampton. Brampton, Ontario, deputy leader of the Ontario NDP, all of a sudden becomes a British Columbia member of parliament for Burnaby. So this happens. We see it a lot. And this is actually a good story because of Pierre's connections with Alberta. But right now, I think most conservatives in the country are saying, where is this by-election? I think a lot of people would like to have this done, and hopefully he wins, and then they can focus on the party.
It's interesting for me because it's like, I think you put a really good spin on it, Rachel.
Thank you.
Because you're amazing.
Thank you.
But Pierre Poilievre held his Ottawa area seat for 21 years. 21, guys. So he's not running in Ontario because he's afraid to lose in Ontario. And so he's going to Alberta where it's much, much, much safer.
I will say to that.
That was just like a long pause.
Well, you made me think, because I'm like, is that a fair assessment? But on one hand, it's true, because also you want to make sure that if you're running a by-election and the costs associated with the by-election, that the leader has the best shot. You don't want to put them in a riding that's an iffy situation. And so
he also can't lose twice. If he loses again, it is over. And he has a mandatory leadership review coming up in January of 2026.
Yes. Which was just announced.
So listen, you don't want to go from losing the seat that you held for 21 years as the leader of the party to losing a by-election to facing a leadership review. That cadence of events would be devastating. So I get it. Listen, I think most parties would probably do the same. You look for a safe seat and you run there.
Yeah. They have.
Yeah, they have, and they will. So now they're waiting for the prime minister to call this by-election.
And I'm hearing it's going to be
in Alberta
in the next few days.
Oh, you have?
Yes.
Okay.
So I hear there's some gearing up.
Very exciting.
That this race may be on.
Everyone cannot wait for a by-election.
Everyone's like, what? We have to have a by-election in the summer?
You know what we can't wait for? A by-election.
Okay.
That could shortly follow the Calgary Stampede, which is another very exciting thing happening in
That is correct.
Alberta.
Yes, and we are actually doing a party for Stampede Beyond a Ballot. We're partnering with Sophie Grace to bring women together to talk about women in politics, women in business. So if you're at the Calgary Stampede, send us a note, and we'd love to host you there. That was a little break in our politics.
That was a nice little plug.
And now I want to shift to NATO. let's talk about NATO.
As one does.
Okay, as one does. From
does.
Calgary, hang out with us at the Calgary Stampede and let's talk about NATO. I want to talk about this because I want to give your team a huge shout out. We have seen.
Why, thank
you. Namely Mark Carney. Mark Carney announced that we would meet our NATO targets of 2%.
Yep.
But he did so a couple of weeks ago, standing in front of a Canadian flag with, I would imagine, half of the Canadian armed forces in this country standing behind him or next to him. And I was watching him and thinking, holy cow, this is something you would see out of a conservative tour, political tour, not what you would typically see the Liberal leader standing there doing. And I thought, what an incredible visual, B, an announcement which Canada has longed for the last 10 years, where we've been dragging our feet on NATO. And what's interesting anecdotally with Beyond a Ballot is that we posted a story like this on our Instagram the other day, and we got a lot of feedback that people from across the political spectrum are really excited about this investment in NATO and our military, which is super interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's interesting. One of the things that I was looking at was there was an Angus Reid survey, and that survey looked at public opinion on this particular issue. And they saw that 51% of Canadians were aligned with that meeting the 2% target. 17% additionally were aligned with spending more. But what's really interesting about that study is that those numbers have doubled in a year.
That's crazy.
Doubled. Public opinion has followed the same trajectory as the threat that we are facing. So that makes sense, right? We face a real threat to our sovereignty. We face a real threat to stability, and Canadians are responding in kind. Their openness to defense spending has changed a lot in the last year. And I think, what's interesting from the Liberal government perspective is that you have Mark Carney. He takes this role. He becomes prime minister. Day one on the job, he is facing down this kind of global instability. And what does he have to respond? Well, he has an armed force that has been chronically underfunded, right?
That's right.
He has infrastructure that in some areas requires a lot of work. And he has equipment that is either non-existent, right? Like we just don't have it. We don't have enough drones. We don't have the fighter jets that we're waiting on. We have submarines that need to be replaced, or we have systems that need a total upgrade, like our systems in the north. So the defense spending, this announcement, this idea of spending more couldn't come at a better time to convince the Canadian public that the time is now.
Right.
Because what's the alternative, right? Like you're not going to get to the NATO table with the rest of your allies who all say, we are facing tremendous global threats. So yes, we're all going to come to the table at 5%. And Canada, given the lack of resources, given our inadequate resources, can't be the ones to say, you know what, we're not going to be the ones to meet that commitment. Right. So I think he's doing the right thing at the right time. And I do think it's something that conservatives, I've heard this a lot from conservative friends, that that there have been a number of Prime Minister Carney announcements that they have been aligned with. And I think that's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, this is, I nerd out on this stuff, as you know, but I've been thinking about this a lot. Like, why is Carney moving so right? Why is he becoming really a progressive, conservative prime minister in a lot of people's eyes?
I don't think he feels that way.
He might not. I think that I have a feeling that he kind of does. Like, I think he's a center right kind of guy, and he's okay with that, moving.
Or maybe just like a true center. Like, I think that the Liberal Party, if you were to ask me as a Liberal, I think that the Liberal Party swung more to the left on the pendulum.
For sure.
Over the last
that was
10
calculated
years, right?
under
I think
Trudeau.
A lot of people will agree.
Yes.
And now I think that we're swinging back to a true centrist party. But we're just not used to it.
Here's why it's advantageous for the Liberals to do that, though. because what we saw in this last election was the Liberals picking up a lot of the NDP support after 10 years of moving closer and closer and closer to the NDP, but also having this agreement with the NDP where they were working together. They've now attracted those left voters, and they were able to pull off government because of that. Then now they've already got those people in that coalition. It's like, okay, all the other people that we kind of abandoned over the last 10 years, let's try and bring them back. So I get it. And this is what the Liberal Party of Canada historically does. I mean, a lot of people call them the natural governing party because they move from left to right and right to left. And so that's where a lot of people also feel alienated, because the Liberals often will do things that just align with the wind of the day or the tide coming in on an issue. They will reposition themselves to align with that based on how the public's feeling. But on the other hand, this is a really interesting move, I think, on Carney's part, because what I think his team is recognizing is the fact that narrative, that centrist right narrative, that common sense narrative that Pierre was talking about a lot during the last couple of years, is what Canadians are looking for right now. And so when we look at his announcements over the last little while, increase our military spending, create stronger borders, take down, build the economy with big infrastructure projects. Like, those are typically announcements that you would see out of conservative governments. And Mark Carney is making that calculated assessment that that's where the Liberals need to go in order to stay in power long term, I think. And now a word from our title sponsor, DoorDash. Just like we go beyond a ballot, DoorDash goes beyond delivery. As the parliamentary season wraps up, we've been reflecting on the stories, debates, and memorable moments that define the year on the Hill and in our communities across the country. Throughout this season, we've highlighted DoorDash's impact in growing, connecting, and empowering Canadian communities, whether through providing flexible work, helping small businesses grow, or saving customers time through access to convenience. We've seen how everyday decisions, whether in Parliament or at your doorstep, can shape the bigger picture. You can find me shamelessly DoorDashing iced coffees to my doorstep all summer long. A big thank you to DoorDash for powering this season of the Beyond a Ballot podcast, and to you for coming along for the ride.
Well, I don't see it as a power play or a power grab, and I don't see it as, it's like a fair weather type thing, or that this is trendy, so we're going to hop on board. I mean, this is a government who's responding to the circumstances of our times. You need a government who is not so committed to their partisan talking points that they cannot pivot and be responsive. We have global threats. We have to land a trade deal with the US. Part of landing the trade deal with the US is doing things like strengthening our borders, is doing things like increasing our defense spending. So there's like catalysts to why Carney is doing what he's doing, and those things didn't exist a year and a half ago. President Trump wasn't in power a year and a half ago. Our trade deal was secure a year and a half ago. The global climate was different a year and a half ago. And so, again, it's not that it's common sense. It's just that it's the only sense. We must do these things at this time in order to not just survive, but thrive. And I think that what Carney has done really well is that he's shed the partisan nature of politics right now. I think that's why Canadians are responding so much. I think for so long they heard this toxicity between the Conservatives and the Liberals that came off as just blatant, pathetic talking points. He's shed that for a more business-like approach, which is, we have a job to do here and we're going to get it done.
I think that part of that, though, is also shedding the legacy of the Trudeau government. I mean, you rarely hear him talk about the last government. You rarely hear him talk about the last 10 years. Like, NATO was something that was discussed openly globally by our allies all the time. And Canada never invested in those targets. And so and normally a new prime minister would come in and say, you know, like the last government didn't do anything, but I'm going to do something. And we just haven't heard any of that. We haven't really heard the name Trudeau. Like I say it and it sounds foreign
Except
to
from
me.
the Conservatives.
Except for the Conservatives. Okay.
Yeah.
But for good reason.
I think really run a risk though. I think they really run
Why?
a risk because I think that if the Conservatives, I think right now Canada has an opportunity, and I applaud them for backing the bills that matter at this time, because we have to put the interests of Canadians in front of political interests. I think any party who's so tied to their partisan talking points, like if the Conservatives go on and on about the last 10 years, honestly, I feel like people will tune that out. What they want to know is the next 10 years.
Which is hilarious.
I would like to know what we're going to do to preserve the next 10 years. I mean, I could go back and I could say, oh, well, you know what? This all started with the Harper government when they froze defense
That's
spending.
what they said for 10 years.
That is.
Oh,
you know, but this is what I like about Carney's approach is that it feels no nonsense. It feels like he's an adult in the room. It's not petty. It's not petty politics. It's like, we have a job to do in the best interest of Canadians. And so help me God, I'm going to get it done. And I for one, I'm for it.
So help me God.
I'm for that.
All right. On that note, I want to also take a minute on this episode just to reflect on the year that was. Okay.
All right.
Let's go through some of the things politically that have happened since we started season 2. I know I'm exhausted just thinking about it, but somebody was saying to me, like, it's so much has happened that it's hard to process everything that has happened. So do you remember that video in September of last year? We had just launched the beginning of season 2, and Jagmeet Singh came onto screen and ripped up a piece of paper saying, we are no longer working with the Liberals. We are tearing up our agreement. Do you remember that? Feels like 10 years ago.
Yeah, of course.
Well,
I remember.
that's how we started this year. We then it was followed by a video.
That did not work out.
That did not work out very well.
No.
It was then followed by a video by then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau talking about the failures of the immigration system. Remember that controversial video?
I do remember that.
That feels like a million years ago. We saw ministers start to resign at that point. Carolyn Bennett, who'd been there forever, big one. Sean Fraser, who was like the next leader of the party. As we know, that didn't happen, but he did come back. Then fast forwarding, I mean, we're only in November now. Then we went to December where we saw all the drama with Chrystia Freeland resigning on the day of the fall economic statement, which was already 2 months late. And then she refused to read it. We saw Karina Gould come into the house and throw the economic statement into the hands of the clerk and run out. That was a crazy day in Canadian politics. There was all these rumors that Mark Carney was being given the finance seat, Minister of Finance seat. And that's where this Carney kind of started to infiltrate Canadian politics. We then went into Christmas. Justin Trudeau went on a ski trip to Revelstoke, BC. He got yelled at. Remember that video of the Canadians saying, get out of here? Of the British Columbians saying, get out of here? That we thought was going to be a nice holiday time. It was anything but. We came back January 6th. The Prime Minister resigned. Shocking no one, except maybe himself. And then we were into a Liberal leadership race. We had Chrystia Freeland come out and run against Mark Carney, who, remembered back in December, that was the narrative, the story narrative was already starting. Then Carney won. He became the Prime Minister for a few days. All the rumors were swirling. Would there be an election? I'm exhausted just remembering all of this. Would there be an election? We went into a campaign, a very short one. April 28th, he became Prime Minister, elected with a minority government. And then all eyes were on Trump. He met with Trump. He went down to Washington. That was a big day. Came out unscathed, most were saying. That was good. And then more recently, Trump came up to Canada. The G7 huge risk. He invited Modi, the Indian prime minister. There was a lot of question about whether or not that was the right decision. And then he made it out of the G7, and this massive conflict erupts between Israel and Iran, testing Canada on our diplomatic measures, on our how we align with our allies. Anita Anand, the new foreign minister, and what positions she would be taking. So all of this to say, in the last however many months, we have been through a lot. We've been through a lot, and we went daily during the federal election. So that was a pretty wild time. But I hope that gives you some sense of just how far we've come in our country, and also with this podcast.
So here we are.
Heading
into the summer.
And so what we wanted to do a little reflection.
Oh, right. Okay. We wanted to.
You forgot.
Yes. Okay. I have 2 questions then. What do you think was the most pivotal moment of everything that you've just described? And 2, okay, now I'll ask 2 after. Start there. What do you think was the most pivotal of those moments?
For me, when I think back on this last year, I will never forget the Christmas holidays, from Chrystia Freeland resigning until January 6th. It was like a 2.5 week period. And it was just constant anxiety about what was going to happen. Where were the Liberals going to go? Was Trudeau going to go against his word and not run in the next election? How could public opinion be so against this prime minister that he had to get out of there? And he took a long time. Like, in politics, we move really fast, right? So to have a week by yourself to make a decision like that is almost never possible. And so everybody was waiting. And I think for me, that was the most pivotal time over the last year when it comes to everything that happened. I just keep thinking about Christmas. What about you?
For me, it was definitely the election of Donald Trump.
Oh.
It changed everything. The world order, the relationships with the world, the stability in the world, the stock market, the geopolitical consequences, the devastating effects that it's had on the US, the racism, the tearing apart of the deep divides. I just think it's it could be the most consequential thing that's happened in our lifetime. So
fair,
which is yet to be seen, but that to me is the one. Okay. I have a second question.
Okay.
What was your favorite episode of season 2?
Can I choose like 35 episodes and say our election special that we did with Kathleen?
That's what I was going to say.
Oh no.
That was going to be my answer. Yes.
Well,
I agree.
Okay. I'll choose. God, there's so many. We had so many amazing guests.
That's okay. That can be
That's
your
it?
choice.
Okay.
That can be your choice.
It was also pretty.
I mean, that's mine too. That was getting to do this every day with supremely smart women who had a point of view and something to say, and getting a chance to spend 15 minutes with all of you who are listening every day on your morning commute or every night on your way home, and getting to share our thoughts on the election was not only my favorite part of season 2, but was like a great privilege of my career. I genuinely loved those 35 days.
Yeah, I agree.
35, 36?
36? Oh my gosh. And taping.
I can't remember now.
We taped that podcast a little behind the scenes from anywhere. So wherever we were at the same time every day, we all got together, and boy, did we tape from some wild locations. So it was a real slog. Like halfway through, we're like, okay, there's only 3 weeks left. But it was truly magic to be able to talk to our audience and to have the privilege of educating every day on what was going on in that campaign. And our hope is that next season, we are going to be able to provide more and more information as well. So stay tuned for that.
Okay. What was your favorite interview of season 2?
Well, I would say Melissa Lantsman, which is, I'm a little bit biased, but it was something that I was really nervous about. And I was I think that her voice, when we think, and like obviously conservative politics are near to my heart, but when we think about conservative politics in this country, I really feel like she is leading the charge on how we define what the party is and who we are as conservatives. And so it was a privilege to be able to talk to the deputy leader at this moment in time and get her perspective on it. What was yours?
Yeah. I think mine was probably, and interestingly, and maybe not so interesting, because I think it shows a little piece of our heart and how much good relationships matter to us. So mine was Mary Ng and Marcy Ian.
Right.
It came off the heels of the election after Mary had served as the longest serving trade minister, and one of my dearest friends, and we got the chance to talk about her and Marcy's experience being in cabinet, being part of the Trudeau cabinet, and making the decision not to run this time around. And I think because it was personal, in really caring about how they felt about that experience, to me, it carried a lot of weight. I loved that interview.
Yeah. I'm just going through our episodes from the past season. And in this list of things that we went through, we didn't even mention the multiple provincial elections that were had in this season.
That's true.
The BC election was a huge one.
Yep.
We talked to David Eby. We talked to Sonia Furstenau, who unfortunately lost her seat, the leader of the Greens in BC. Yep. David Eby told us his favorite television shows. That was a big moment when he said he watches Below Deck. We loved that.
We loved it.
I had the opportunity. You were away, and I had to interview Scott Moe, the now reelected premier of Saskatchewan. We also had the NDP, Carla Beck, NDP leader in Saskatchewan, on for that. We had the Ontario election, like in the middle of all of this. Remember that? Yes. We talked to Marit Stiles and Bonnie Crombie.
We're still waiting on Doug Ford.
Dougie, this is an open invite.
You're listening.
Yeah, we're waiting. We will hopefully talk to Dougie soon. We also really talked about the U.S. stuff. And you're right. Like I'm so focused on Canada all the time, but the U.S. was a big part of this. We had Jessica Yellen on with us. We had Sharon McMahon from Sharon Says So on with us to talk about what is the Electoral College. So an incredible season that was so busy, we forgot about multiple elections that took place. It's just been crazy.
And those interviews, if you haven't had the chance, a bunch of those interviews are worth listening to, because they're evergreen. You know, they may, it's not that election date, or it's not that particular time, but a lot of those individuals who gave us their time really talked about like what drove them to be in politics. They shared with us some insights that I think are, some of those I've really taken with me. And I think it's worth it if you haven't had the chance to kind of go back and see that list of really entertaining interviews and check some off your box.
Absolutely. And also listen to some of these leaders the days before Election Day and what they were saying to us before Election Day. Might be really interesting to go back. Okay. Well, what are your summer plans? Let's wrap up here.
Well, I am going to spend some time with my kiddos. For those who don't know, I have 3. I have an 11-year-old son who's a go-kart racer who's going to be racing every single weekend.
Crazy.
So you can typically find me at a racetrack somewhere. And my daughter's 8-year-old twins. And all of them are on summer vacation. Their school season ended early, so they're already into summer. We're going to spend lots of time together, take a little bit of time off work to be able to do that. But the agency that I run, Pomp and Circumstance, is also very busy. We have a lot going on this summer with a lot of fantastic brands that we're really proud of. So there's still tons of work to do, but I think a little bit of balance, a little bit of time with the fam jam, and a lot of time with the work that I love very much. What about you?
Yeah, same. I mean, my kids are 2 and 4, so they're babies, but they're a lot. But it'll be nice to have some time. I don't know if you find this, but I find that July is like the time where so many people draw their red line when it comes to time off. And so many people, even when we sent the Beyond About newsletter yesterday, the out of offices that we got back were crazy.
Totally.
Like everybody's off. Everybody wants that time with their family. And so this year, my goal is really to spend the time with my kids. I mean, my newborn child is now 2.5, which is crazy to think about. We thought about starting this long when I was pregnant with her, and now here we are. She's
inquiring minds want to know, though, is she sleeping through the night?
Yes. Shout out to my husband, who I've never given a shout out to on this.
You got there.
He trained her because I was unable. I physically could not let her cry. I would just lose my mind and go in there and get her. But he did it. He sleep trained her. So she's sleeping.
How did he keep you out? How did he keep you out of the room?
I had to move to our guest room and turn a fan on so I couldn't hear her. And then
you did.
Yeah, it was a whole process.
Really?
Oh yeah. And there's no going back. She has very strict sleeping conditions now. And it's life-changing. We are doing so much better.
It is, right?
Yeah. Thank you for your encouragement. Amanda encouraged me. It's going to be a little bit of pain.
I was like,
for
girl,
a lot
you
of
need to sleep.
I know. And she's doing much better. And that's why we can now travel a bit this summer and she can sleep and we can all be human. So yeah, really looking forward to it.
Rach, you know what I haven't told you yet is that I'm coming to your province, to the beautiful province of BC.
Oh, when?
Over Labor Day
Oh,
weekend.
you are?
To visit my husband Mark's family
because
in
he's
the
from
interior.
BC.
Yeah. So we can't wait. We can't wait to get back out there. It's been a couple of years since I've been to the interior and I love it. It's one of my favorite places on earth.
Me too.
And love being able to spend some summer vacation in this beautiful country of ours. So tell us where you're headed.
Yeah.
We'd love to know, people.
Yeah.
Share with us your great ideas for traveling in Canada in particular, and we'll share them with our audience.
I have a feeling there's going to be a lot less travel to the U.S. this summer.
I have a feeling.
That's probably true. All right. To our listeners, thank you very much for tuning in, but we're not done yet. We have one more episode that is going to be coming out July 5th. This is a big episode for us. We have a really great guest, and we are so excited to share that with you early next week, who it is. But stay tuned because we wrap season 2 next week, and we'll talk to you then.
Thank you for listening. New episodes air every Friday.
Subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram and find us at beyondaballot.com.